Let me tell you a story about the biggest fish caught so far on an SCR rod. It was back in June. I used a 12-foot ST and I was out at a lake in France called Labyrinth. For anyone that doesn't know the fishery, it's exactly that. It's exactly what it says it is. It's a real labyrinth of a lake. It's made up of big bays, a main lake, some channels. The fish could be absolutely anywhere. I had a preconceived idea of where I wanted to come out in the draw. Unfortunately, I came out second to last in the draw and didn't really have much choice of pegs, but I ended up in a swim called the tennis court. Had about 4 or 5 acre bay all to myself. So after a whole day messing about in the boat looking for spots, I managed to find 3 or 4 really good looking spots, 2 opposite far margin fishing to woodwork, and 1 about 30 yards off the woodwork spots, just a raised bit of hard gravel surrounded by an absolute underwater jungle of weed. First night went well, caught a fish from the woodwork, 40 pounder. Second night caught. Third night I think I blanked. On the Wednesday night, couldn't really set the scene any better. It was pitch black, 3 o'clock in the morning. The fog was so dense that you could barely see your hand in front of your face, and I woke up to an absolutely blistering take on the open water rod. Obviously run down the bank, tucked into it. It's taking line. I managed to gain a bit of control, got it back towards me, good 20-30 yards on it, and then it buried itself solid in the weed. It felt like a good fish, it was hard to tell. With that, I jumped in the boat, knowing it was nowhere near the woodwork. One thing I did do was forget to leave a light on at the bivvy, which is a bit of a crime when you're fishing out in the boat in the dark, but we got back in the end. Got out in the boat, and I pumped myself out to the fish, and I got above the weed bed eventually that I thought it was in. Got that jagged pull, and it pinged, my line pinged out the weed bed, and all of a sudden I'm in the next weed bed along. And then I'm zigzagging all the way towards the woodwork. And then eventually I got sight of the fish, and it was just me and the fish. There was a bit of weed on the line, and luckily the fish turned the boat round and me and sent me back into open water. At this time I didn't have a clue what I had on the end. Started to gain a bit of line. And for those of you that know, when you're boat fishing and you get above the fish, I could see the milky shape swirling under the water, the milkiness. It looked like a good one, thought lovely. He went on one final run underneath the boat, and as the boat spun round, I've got the fish up, and it must have been about a foot under the water. I've put the head torch on, and it's come out on its side from underneath the boat, and it just kept coming, and it was absolutely massive. And at this point my knees are gone, I'm absolutely wobbling. My first thought is, if I don't land this fish, no one's ever going to believe this story. And with that, the fish had buried itself down into another weed bed again, but a few minutes later it's come back up, and it was so long that I got its head probably 6 to 8 inches past the spreader block. I've got the net underneath it, and I've literally dropped the rod in the boat, grabbed both arms of the net, and I'm rinsing it in like you do, and turned it round, got it sideways, and I'm just stood there in the middle of the night in a boat in the middle of France on my own, looking down at the biggest fish, the biggest carp I've ever seen, and it was in my net. So with that, I've rolled the net up. I've had my moment out on the water. Now I thought I've got to find my way back, so I've hooked the fish onto the side of the boat as you do. Eventually found my way back to shore, and went and got my mate Roger, who was fishing behind me. He had one as well. We'd done the pictures, and his was 56. It was a big fish, and I just thought to myself, mine looks a lot bigger than that. I really wanted a 60 pounder when I went out there. So Roger's come and helped me, and we've gone out in the water and got the sling out, and we're one end each of the sling. We've lifted it up, and Roger's gone, oh, I think I've got the head end. He's a bit of a weakling, sorry Rog. And I've opened up the sling, and I'm looked at him, I've gone, nah, I've got the head end, Rog. And with that, we've waddled back up. We've had the scales and everything were already zeroed. We had some 60-pound scales zeroed, and we had the 120s all zeroed, ready to go. Started with the 60s, we've hung it up on the tripod. And if you've ever bottomed scales out before, they normally gradually go around and then stop, and you think, oh, it's got to be a bit bigger than that. These, nah, boom, straight round, bottomed out like they were nothing. So with that, we've taken the fish back off the scales, put the bigger scales on, put it round on, and sure enough, the scales swung round, and I couldn't see the dial, My mate could see the dial and he just looked at me and smiled and said, welcome to the club. And I said, what is it, a 70? He went, no, 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 you better come round here. Sure enough, went round the other side. £81, 4 ounces, the absolute fish of a lifetime. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to go there and catch a fish that big. Yeah, it was a massive slice of luck involved in that. Yeah, I was in the right place at the right time and I put myself there, but you simply can't choose which fish picks up your hook bait. And the rod, reel, you know, fishing 30-pound braid, 50-pound leader, everything was up to the challenge. And as for the ST12, that really, really did the business. When your luck's in, it's in. It's better to be lucky than good.